friends, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to paint this Arctic penguin. So I have masked out the penguin with contact adhesive paper, and I'm starting with a very wet background, working wet on wet watercolor technique. I want a very fuzzy and out of focus background. This is what the wet on wet technique is good for. Starting off with cerulean blue and just getting a nice wash for the sky. I am coming in with some ultramarine blue for the icebergs in the back. I have also used cobalt turquoise. Turquoise is my favorite color. It's my brand color. And I'm wearing a turquoise sweater. Ha! Increasing the ultramarine. It's still wet, so you can see I still have very soft edges. And notice the little cardstock I have off to the side. I kind of left that in the shot to show you when you're working out colors, if you want to know if something is going to go well together, just take a piece of scrap watercolor paper and give it a go on that before you actually use it in your real project. Now, I loved using mineral violet with yellow ochre to make the sand. It turned out very natural and organic. I am using Van Dyke Brown for the shadows in the sand. So I let that dry, and now I'm working on the rocks. Wetting the rocks first and just blocking in the major colors that I see that are on those rocks. These are beautiful big boulders, big stones, and there is lots of different colors in there. Some yellowy type of rocks, very creamy colors, purples, blues, just a wide variety. Some of the colors I used for the rocks were indigo with Peruvian blue and the mineral violet again. I sprinkled some salt on the rocks so it gives it this texture. And then you have to wait for it to dry. You take off all the salt, and then you can start on your second layer and just building up these textures. Doing a lot of dry brushing, I'll hold my brush off to the side like you just saw. And with different consistencies of paint, you will make a lot more texture. So it just adds, all these little layers adds to the realism of the rocks. More dry brushing. Notice that's a very liquidy version of a wash. It's almost like dirty water. Now I'm going in with some very darker colors of that Peruvian blue to give the rocks a more three-dimensional look. Okay, so for this neutral color rock, I kind of use a very watery mixture of yellow ochre with some Van Dyke Brown. Adding in all the shadowy areas that I am seeing on the rocks. I used some sepia for the shadows. I'm getting in those rocks in the background. Now I'm putting a glaze over the rocks, a very light indigo glaze, just to kind of have them all be a little bit more cohesive in color, and I don't want it to look like fake, like they're rainbow colored rocks. I wanted to capture those differences in color, but I also want it to look uniform. erasing some of those lines that I don't want showing. And I'm wetting the front of the bird, and I'm putting in a very watery mixture of the same color basically that I used for the sand. Always painting in the direction the fur goes. While it's still wet, I'm dropping in some more of the shadow colors underneath his belly. Now the very tip of his beak has some fleshy colors. So whatever I have in my palette, I'm just putting that down as an underpainting. Putting in the pupil and the outline of his eye. So basically I'm working around the bird, and as one section dries, I'm painting a different section. Wetting his head so that I can do his first color of the neutral tint. Always painting in the direction the fur goes. Adding on another coat. Increasing the thickness of my paint will increase the saturation. Putting on my first coat on his back and on that flipper of some neutral tint with some Van Dyke brown. Again, while it's still wet, I'm coming back in with a more concentrated consistency of paint to increase the saturation of the color. Painting in all those teeny tiny feathers. So going back up to his head, and I really need to get that dark so that he really pops against the background. Working on his beak with more of those fleshy tones. Yeah, just doing some final touches. I thought that I needed to increase some of these shadows that I'm seeing on the front of the penguin. And so I am adding in all those marks and always painting in the direction that the feathers are going. Going back over that beak again. Put those final touches and you are done. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and let me know what you think. I'll see you next week.